This video is brought to you by Cracks Only. Check out the link in the video description below to get to their website and check out their latest products. Trust me, you do not want to miss them.
What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well. Welcome back to another edition of the Transfer View. Happy Friday. We made it. We made it through another week. It's January 26th. Only a few days left of the January transfer window. It's another edition of the Transfer View. Transfers, what are they, eh? We're going to be talking about plenty, though, this morning, particularly when it comes to Manchester City, Pep Guardiola possibly being rattled, maybe just a smidge, when it comes to Omar Berrada jumping ship from City to Manchester United to become the brand new CEO of the club. So we'll be chatting about that. We'll also be talking about some transfer stories, even though there is really nothing going on when it comes to transfers in the world of Manchester United for January anyway. There's a story about Callum Wilson from Newcastle being available for a transfer in January for as little as £18 million. Also, we're going to expand upon what we chatted about yesterday with the information that we had, certainly. It was kind of later reported in the day by The Athletic, by Laura Whitwell, that signings just ain't happening in January because of the FFP and the profit and loss sustainability rules. Just January signings aren't happening. That was later reported by The Athletic yesterday. So we'll be chatting about that as well. But when it comes to some of the summer transfer moves, particularly in the striker area, Joshua Zirkzee still linked to Manchester United. So we'll be chatting about that. And of course, we're live for the whole hour. So certainly anything can happen. Anything's possible. When you're live, go live, you never know what's going to break. So there's plenty to get into this morning. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know where you're watching from as always. Let me know what the weather's like. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the weather, haven't we, recently, with the chilliness and the coldness. Not so bad now. Weather's still not great, it must be said. Still not amazing, the weather. But it's not too bad. It's a bit warmer. You know, I'm one of these people, you know me, I always say this over and over and over and over and over and over again. I am a winter person. I do prefer winter weather. I'm not a big summer person, to be honest with you. I'm not a big summer guy. I don't like the heat. I prefer the cold. I prefer wrapping up in a blanket or a duvet as opposed to being, you know, when you're in bed at night, you're like, oh, it's too hot. I can't sleep because it's too hot. All this kind of stuff. I can't be dealing with it. Can't be dealing with that at all. So get a bit warmer. But what are people saying here in the chat at the moment? Let's have a look. Mustafa says, Pep rattled. Nikhil says, hit that like. Daniel Luciana says, morning Owen, big up UV fam. Kristen says, in the gym in Colchester, good. Gotta get that early morning exercise. It's the best time to do it in the day, you know, start your day off right. Prod by Palmeiras says, tuning in from home back in windy Leicester. Prod by Palmeiras was on holiday in Egypt. George says, 11 degrees in the Netherlands, finally getting a little bit warmer. Peter says, it's warmer, 61 in Atlanta. Joel's in sunny Wales. Keenan says, good morning, Owen. It's a beautiful summer's day in Cape Town, South Africa. See, this is why I love that question. People always ask, Owen, why do you ask that question all the time? Why do you ask about where people are from the weather? That's why. Look at all the different countries there. The US, South Africa, you know, Wales, just in England. I mean, it's great. It's great. Gaurav's in India as well. Look at that. Oh, brilliant. The global community, that is the UV community, is spectacular, certainly. So big up to everyone that's tuning in. Right, let's get into Pep Guardiola has been talking. He had his press conference ahead of the FA Cup weekend. And of course, probably the biggest thing to be asked of the Manchester City manager was about Omar Berrada, the City Group's chief footballing officer, forget his actual title, becoming the chief executive officer at Manchester United, becoming Manchester United's new CEO. I'm sure that Erik ten Hag will be asked similar questions in his press conference today. It's at 1:30, I think it is, and then it actually gets released at 1:45. I'll be live about 2 o'clock to guide you through the questions and the responses as well. But Pep Guardiola was asked about Omar Berrada, and he had some interesting responses, certainly when it came to the departure across Manchester for the executive. He said, Quote, Man City is going to move forward, find a way to replace him, Omar Berrada, and continue. A new guy is coming, maybe from here. Ferran and Khaldoon will decide. The guys will be well prepared, will adapt, adjust to new knowledge, and move forward. So you would say, well, that's not really that sort of salty, but it continues. Omar's knowledge goes to Manchester United. His knowledge, that's the reality. When you buy a player from another club, you bought the knowledge that this player had in the past with another manager, another teammate. That is normal. Always we learn. Manchester City learned a lot from Omar, but Omar learned a lot from Manchester City, and this combination now goes to Manchester United. So you would say, well, so far, pretty tame stuff, pretty tame stuff, saying, we learned a lot from him, but he learned a lot from us. That's how, jobs work. But this is the thing. This is the thing that a lot of people really picked up. This quote right here, where he says, maybe Manchester United thinks this person, everything's going to change. Congratulations. I don't know if this is going to happen. And you go, oh, Pep. And I wish I could do a Pep Guardiola impression. I can't. I'm not like Flex. I can't do the Pep. I can't do any impressions, really. But you can just imagine him saying it. Congratulations. Congratulations. Maybe you think this is going to change everything. Congratulations. I don't know if that's going to happen. I thought that was very interesting. We'll continue, and I'll give you my thoughts on it in a second. But then he gets very nice about him. He says he's a lovely person, an incredible character, incredible professional. Yesterday, I saw him, we hugged, and I wished him all the best. But then, one more sort of little dig at the end. If it does happen, so he was asked about could Man United become immediately successful, basically, now that Omar Berrada has gone there. He says, if it does happen, then oh my God, they have to make a stand for Omar Berrada in the future because he deserves it. So, just sort of take a step back with really what he's saying there. He's saying if Manchester United immediately become successful, build a stand for Omar Berrada because he deserves. It's a very difficult job. Now, the argument certainly could be made there. Is he really lying? That's something we've all said. It's something that we've said in these shows. You have said it in the live chat, the comment section below. I've even said something quite similar with a manager or a CEO. The person to turn Manchester United around can write a blank check, really, can't they, for themselves? Because the first manager to win the first league title after Sir Alex Ferguson, they can be like, oh, it's the first person to do it in a decade. If Omar Berrada does come in, and in 3 or 4 years we're saying Manchester United, they were just so badly run a few years ago, and now the wages are down. Look how we're operating in the transfer market. On the pitch, we're starting to be successful again, and Old Trafford's getting redeveloped, or there's a new stadium being built, and look at this new training ground. We're moving away from Carrington across the city to somewhere else, and all of these things are going on. It's incredible, fantastic. This guy has really steered the ship. So he's not really saying anything there because that's too radical, because of course it's a really challenging job. Manchester United's a mess, a total complete mess, and the way the club operates is a complete mess as well. But the part where Pep goes, oh, congratulations. We'll see. There's an argument to be said it could be round. I mean, look, from the get-go, when this thing was first announced, or the story was first broken by David Ornstein from The Athletic, and then very quickly City released their statement, United released their statement, it is widely and generally considered to be a bit of a coup by Manchester United, right? City, put the alleged corruption or allegations, whatever you want to call it, to one side. They are very successful. They have been very successful over the last year. They won the treble last year. They've won everything there is to win, and they continue to win. And despite the fact that they're not top of the Premier League at the moment, come the end of the season, if City win the league, nobody's going to be surprised by that. So, it's a huge, it's a well-oiled machine. No pun intended there. But for United to manage to sort of steal a senior figure within their organisation, that's a significant deal. And I'm sure from their perspective, they might be a bit of sort of bruised ego, dented pride sort of situation with, because as we have said, when we've been talking about candidates, not just for the CEO, but when we've been talking about sporting directors and head of recruitments and things of that nature, when we've been talking about those people, we ourselves as Man United fans have said, well, why would they want to come here? Like, why would they want to come into this mess? Because it is a mess. Why would they want to work under the Glazers? Why would they want to work in this, political bonfire as it was, and just get completely burnt up. Like, why would they want to do that? And maybe there was an element of arrogance. Maybe there was a element of arrogance with City, where they thought, no one's gonna take any of our people. Look, we've got the best in class. We've got the best. We are the best. We've won all of these trophies. Even if they get offers, they're not going to jump ship. Why would they jump ship? And the fact that Man United have been able to pull that off, and the fact that Jim Ratcliffe, today Brailsford, have been able to convince Omar Berrada about the United project, it's got a sting. It's got a sting for them. And Pep, he can be, we've seen Pep Guardiola when he loses football matches, or sometimes just in general with interviews and press conferences, he can just be a very salty guy. It's almost a meme at this point, isn't it? Whether it's the shocked reaction, with that one, or the more than you'll ever know. You're like, isn't that what? Didn't they ask him, are you happy with that performance? More than you'll ever know. More than you'll ever know. And I can just imagine that's what it's like when it comes to this. And look, the reaction to Omar Berrada's appointment has been quite interesting. Now that it's sort of several days in and we're sort of, settling down a little bit, it is funny because always, I guess, a good gauge of whether anything's good for Manchester United is the reaction of opposition fans or opposition pundits, because you would think pundits should just be blanket, they provide analysis, but they don't. It's opposition pundits. There has been a lot of people trying to be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, what? So Man United, they always try and project, don't they? They always go, so Man United fans think. So Man United fans think they're back now because they got a City person to be their CEO. And I would think, you can correct me if I'm wrong here in the chat. I don't think the average Man United fan thinks, oh, Man United are back. We're back now. We got Berrada and everything's going to be transformed. It's going to be better. I think almost the opposite. I think there's quite a lot of skepticism still. There's hope, and there's sort of some cautious optimism of, it's a good move. We haven't done that kind of move in a really long time, and it was quick and it was kept quiet, and there's a lot of pedigree there, and hopefully it's the first step of several positive steps. But by no stretch of the imagination do I think anyone, thinks, oh yeah, United are back. Because there's still a lot of work to be done. There is still several steps to go. Hopefully, Omar Berrada can be a driving force in making sure these steps are positive steps, the next ones that we take. But by no stretch of the imagination do I think United fans say, we're back. And the amount of, again, opposition fans that are trying to push it like, it doesn't even mean anything. I don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't mean anything. So you think United are going to be great now? Is that what you think? You go, you sound pretty worried for something that doesn't matter that much. So it is a positive step for United. We still do have to have an element of, I would say patience, but we have to, I guess, live in reality still that Omar Berrada doesn't start till the summer, and in the immediate future, and I mean like this season, for the rest of this season, things are going to be how they've always been this season, which is incredibly up and down, incredibly frustrating. Chances are we're still going to have some pretty bad results this season and some pretty embarrassing results this season. I know that sounds very defeatist and it's probably a negative start to the morning, but that's kind of where we're at, because when it comes to improvements to the squad in terms of incomings, it's not going to happen. We're going to get players back and hopefully we can have a much more positive second half to the season. But in the more immediate future, nothing's going to change that much. And we need to kind of keep that in mind when it pertains to Omar Berrada and Ineos and what have you, because all eyes certainly are on the summer, aren't they? All eyes are on the summer. All eyes are on the next steps, because as I mentioned that there's cautious optimism about Omar Berrada coming in, if the next move is to point a sporting director into, imagine they just went, we've got a new sporting director, Darren Fletcher, we think you've done such a good job as the technical director, you're the new sporting director, come on, you've done a great job. You can imagine what the reaction would be to that, they'd be like, nothing has changed. It is all the same. We're screwed. Typical Manchester United, right? So still, this is why I say cautious optimism, because there are still several steps to go. And if we did end up in a situation where it was Omar Berrada, and again, we don't know the name specifically. The names are linked to like Dan Ashworth, Paul Mitchell. But let's say it's just not necessarily them, but someone of that ilk, a sort of renowned sporting director, a renowned head of recruitment. Then, heading into the summer, you'd be like, I tell you what, this is going to be really, really interesting as to what United do in not only the transfer market, but as I've said, just wider decisions. The manager will be one of them. Whether he stays or goes, that will be a topic of conversation before people get angry about it. It's just, that is going to be a conversation point. All that kind of stuff. People will be looking at the summer going, that is going to be really interesting to see what United do. And if they do get those positive pieces in place on the chessboard, as it were, then that's maybe when the optimism starts to rise more and more. But as of right now, it's still in the territory of sort of cautious optimism, definitely. Super chat from Amanor says, Owen, LFC are the winners here. City's era ends. Well, this is the thing with City, and this is something that I do kind of agree with, that this kind of reaction that because we got Omar Berrada, then like City are just going to fall apart. If City fall apart, it's going to be due to the fact that the 115 charges stick and they get relegated to like the conference or whatever. I don't know if, and this isn't to play down his importance to City either, but I don't know if one person is just going to make that well-oiled machine completely stop working. I just don't see that, to be honest with you. Like, again, they're too fluid, and if their recruitment on the pitch is anything to go by, and I know he kind of spearheaded a lot of that stuff, but if their recruitment on the pitch is anything to go by, then I'm sure they'll find someone that will be very capable and very competent to fill Omar Berrada's position at Manchester City. So I don't really perceive City as like, completely falling apart because we got Berrada. It'll be a difficult person to replace, and I'll have to make sure they find the right person. But if anything's going to end City's era, as it were, it's going to be those 115 charges and like Pep leaving or something like that. The one person you could say to make things crumble at City in terms of dominance on the pitch would be Pep. If Pep decides he has had enough one day and he's going to go, then you'll see City, and let's say hypothetically the 115 charges don't stick, then you'll probably see what you saw prior to Pep Guardiola, which is City still in and about it, but not on the consistent level that they are now. A bit like under Mancini and Pellegrini, where it's like, well, one year they might win the league, and next season they're finishing fourth or third or something like that. But I don't think with the Berrada move that it means that they're completely done yet. I mean, maybe he knows something that we don't about City and what's to come, and those charges sticking. But I don't know, like I said, if it's just like, Berrada's gone, that means they're going to be completely screwed. What's people saying here in the chat here at the moment? Let's have a look. Simon says, all players know they're playing for their future. Araya says, facts, Owen. If we get Ashworth and Mitchell, it's going to take at least 3 windows, maybe 4, for us to start seeing players out and in, given the current financial situation. We're going to talk about, obviously, the finances later on as well. G-Man says, rattled. City have just done the treble and in contention to winning the Premier League for a 4th year in a row. We have a lot of work to do to catch up. I don't think one really constitutes the other, to be honest with you. I mean, the part that you've just said about City winning the treble and possibly winning their 4th in a row, that's absolutely true. And you can be incredibly successful and still be annoyed or frustrated or a bit rattled. That it's a bit like you've got a partner and they go, I'm leaving you, and you go, I thought we'd had something really good. We've had some great years. What's going on here? This is great. This is perfect. And they go, yeah, I want to go to someone else. You go, oh. And then you find out who the person is that they go to, and you go, them, they're a mess. They're a mess. This is great. And they go, I just want a bit of a change. You go, what? So you can, and then that's when it gets back into sort of the ego territory, isn't it? That can hurt your ego. that can really bruise your pride. And maybe that's what kind of City look at it like, going, wait a minute, this guy, by all accounts, Berrada, he was meant to be sort of the heir to the throne, as it were, to take over from Cheeky or whoever in the future. That they go, but you've got the keys to the kingdom. No, I want something different. And that, again, that doesn't matter how successful you are. If anything, how successful you are in that current period can make it sting even more. Because you go, but why? And it can certainly sting or hurt your ego, because it just goes to show, doesn't it? As successful as you can be on the pitch and winning all these things, you still ain't Man United. You still don't have that lure. You still don't have that sort of, that reach. You still don't have that initial gut feeling when someone goes, so someone's interested, and you go, who? You go, Man United, and you go, oh, Man United. And you go, I know they're shit, but whoa, that's pretty. Man United, really? They're interested. Wow. You can't manufacture that. You can't. Success, it takes a while to get to that point. So of course it can sting. Absolutely it can. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about Callum Wilson. Now this is a bit of a weird one, certainly, because as I mentioned, Man United ain't buying anyone. Nevertheless, it's a story. We can get through it fairly quickly. So this comes from the Evening Standard. And I suppose it's not necessarily just Manchester United that it's sort of linked to. So maybe this is why it's just sort of United have been informed of his availability. But according to the Evening Standard, Newcastle could sell Callum Wilson for just £18 million in the final week of the January transfer window, with Chelsea, Arsenal and Manchester City all alerted to his availability. So essentially, Newcastle or his agent have kind of shopped him out. It's not necessarily United being like, we're going for Callum Wilson or anything like that. All three clubs want to sign a striker and a proven Premier League goal scorer, and he's now come onto the market. Newcastle need to raise money to ensure they stay in line with Premier League profit and sustainability rules after spending around £400 million since they were taken over by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund back in 2021. Yeah, Newcastle find themselves in a very bad situation, certainly. And this is kind of when, this is what's interesting, because people talk about the job that Eddie Howe has done at Newcastle, and that's not to say he's not done a good job, because of course he has. He got Newcastle, he took them over, well, they bottom of the league. I don't even know if they won a game that season when Steve Bruce was in charge. Took them over. That second half of the season, they basically won near enough every game. They finished like 10th in the end. Season after that, they finished 4th. They're in the Champions League. But what can't be ignored, and this is the position that they find themselves in now, is they have spent a lot of money. A lot. This isn't like a miracle, he's been working on a shoestring budget kind of scenario. They've spent a lot, and they haven't really sold for that huge amount as well. Like they really haven't. And they find themselves now in this position where they're looking at how their season is playing out, and the likelihood they're probably not going to qualify for the Champions League again, and they're like, damn, we need to sell some people, otherwise we're going to be a bit in trouble when it comes to the profit and loss and all that kind of stuff. So one of these people we've seen the last few days, Miguel Almiron, possibly linked to like his move to Saudi. Now Callum Wilson seemingly available, £80 million transfer. So I'm sure he maybe has been offered out. I'm sure he has been offered out to Manchester United or some clubs like that they mentioned, Chelsea, Arsenal, anyone that's in the market for a striker, basically. But it's not going to be United. Now, this is when the sort of frustration comes in, certainly, because the frustrating part would be that if Manchester United were run properly, and if our recruitment was actually good, and over the last several years we had bought players at an appropriate price point, and we had sold and moved players on at a decent value as well, we'd not put players on high wages, we could find ourselves now in a situation where we'd be like, we need a striker, it's January, someone becomes available, and we can go in for him. But we don't have that capability. Not necessarily because we don't have money. It's just a case of, again, from the FFP point of view, there is nothing we can do. So this is one of those stories where, sure, Callum Wilson gets offered to Manchester United, but United can't do anything. United are stuck until the summer, until they sell players, unless somehow radically they sold, I don't know, someone in January. I don't even know who that would be at this point. Anthony goes to Saudi Arabia, £50 million, then they would be able to do it. But there's nothing that United can do. And again, that's the frustrating part because, and I get that. And it happened last year in January when we were linked to like João Felix and people were like, go get João Felix, go get him on loan, even though the loan was ridiculously expensive. And you have to kind of remind people that we cannot do it. We just can't. And that's the frustrating thing. The frustrating thing is players becoming available, because players always become available in these, particularly in like the January window. It's quite ad hoc. Suddenly player falls out with management or for FFP rules or something. A player becomes available, and then if you're a well-run club, an efficient-run club, you can go snap them up. Boom. Sign them. We need a striker. Because if we got Callum Wilson, I'm not saying we qualify for the Champions League, but it would solve a lot of problems. We'd be like, oh, I've got someone that can score goals, has scored goals in the Premier League. Massive injury troubles and injury concerns. And I suppose you could argue, if things were perfect at United, would we go after a Callum Wilson? Probably not. But again, this is when it goes back to, the FFP, and this is when it goes back to the profit and loss and all that kind of stuff. I know the reaction, and I know that people don't want to hear it, and I know the frustration when you bring it up, because every time I've brought it up, however many months, I can't even remember how long it's been, for so long, you get the reaction. People in the comments or people in the chat would be like, oh, why'd you talk about FFP so much? Why did you talk about the profit and loss so much? It's not your money. That's the argument. That's the argument. And I remember at the time, I think Anthony, this was when it was brought up about Anthony, and when it was brought up this past summer. And some of the pushback about it is people will say, it's not your money. Why do you care? Why do you care? It's not your money. It doesn't matter how much United spend. It absolutely does. And this is proof is in the pudding. This is the pudding right here. I hope you're all enjoying the taste of it. I'm not. Because if you spend wisely and you spend appropriately, then you don't find yourselves in position that United are now. And to be honest, it's not just United. Look across the Premier League. I can't recall a January transfer window being as quiet as this one has been in a very, very, very long time. Fabrizio Romano, what's he think? He's doing phone adverts, stuff like that, because there's nothing going on. He's doing here we goes for mid-table clubs in Germany and Spain. No disrespect, but I don't think that's the big blockbuster transfer that he thought he was going to be doing in the winter window. And that's all because of FFP and the profit and loss, the PSR. It's all because of that. So United, I suppose, in that sense, don't find themselves completely different from anywhere else. But next time, when we're in the summer or in a couple of years, whenever it may be, and we're talking about transfers and people go, oh, it doesn't matter how much we spend, it's not your money. It absolutely matters. Absolutely matters, because of situations like this, because of transfer windows like this, where eventually it will come back and it will bite you in the arse. And it constantly bites us in the arse. And in fairness to those reporters, I remember back when we signed Anthony, and I'm not just putting it completely on him, but I remember when we signed Anthony back in 2022, that a lot of the reporters, I remember The Athletic running a piece from it at the time, I can't remember who else did it, essentially saying that Anthony money is coming out of next season's budget, So the amount of money you got to spend in the summer, and we still managed to spend quite a bit of money, but that money you're going to spend next summer and next January and that January and that season as well is not going to be there. It's just not going to be there at all. And you're going to have to deal with that. And at the time, you just go, don't matter. We need a right winger. Bring him in. Fast forward 18 months later, and it's like, damn. Could have really done with that money. Could have really done with some of that extra budget that we were looking for, because right now we could do with reinforcements to really, I would say, save our season or really get something tangible out of the season, and we don't have it. We've got to make do with what we've got. But look, some people will say, make do with what you've got. Look at all the players you've got. Look how much money you've spent. Make do with what you got. You've got great players. You should figure that out. So when it comes to Callum Wilson, indeed, not happening. Let's see what the chat is saying. Let's have a look. Ash, one of our members, says, I hate this because we could have, if we didn't do deals like Mount and Onana, follow the cash flow. We could have, but we spent stupidly. How did we get Weghorst, etc.? Indeed, it's kind of what I'm saying there. Lil Yo-Yo says, Owen, check the likes, please. Not even near 200 likes. Well, indeed, I can see it right there. We've got nearly 1,000 people watching, less than 200 likes. If you haven't already, click the like button. Be sure to subscribe. Bottom right-hand corner. We can get to... It's Friday. It's Friday. Click the like button. Let's see if we can get to 500. I mean, it's a solo show. You know, we can raise the likes if you haven't already. It's free. It's free. So yes, click the like button if you haven't already. A reminder, this show is brought to you by Cracks Only. The link is in the video description. You can get your hats, you can get your t-shirts, your hoodies, your puffer jackets, your socks, all of your apparel. Big LA-based brand. We spoke about the weather earlier on. If you are in California in the chat, there might be. Let me know what the weather's like at the moment, because Flex always goes, it doesn't matter if it's, sunny in California. It might not be sunny in California at the moment. I don't know. So if you are in California, or if someone's just in the chat can go on their weather app, let me know, because then we can judge what we could get from Cracks Only if we were in California at the moment. The point being is, it's a big LA-based brand, and lots of MLS players in the United States, soccer players wearing the apparel too, and you can join them, not in the States, but wearing the stuff. Links in the video description. Be sure to check them out. We appreciate them bringing you this show. Now, I do have a clip as well for you today. Oh, multimedia show. I know, very impressive stuff, isn't it? We got a clip from our What the Devil podcast. Yes, a collaboration between United View and United District. Yesterday, we had episode 2, and they were discussing the legacy of one Anthony Martial at Manchester United. Of course, Martial has undergone groin surgery. He's going to be out of action for up to 10 weeks. They think, of course, he's out of contract at the end of the season, $250K a week. United had an option to extend his contract. They said, no, we're not going to do it. So all signs point to Martial leaving at the end of the season. So yesterday, during episode 2 of What the Devil, they discussed what's Martial's legacy and what went right, what went wrong for him.
When we were going through the transition with Erik ten Hag, when he played, we were better.
He scored 9 or 10 goals, I think, in the season, despite the fact that he... Actually, just quick stat for you.
Go on then.
So I was doing some research on Martial's, how many minutes he's played. In the last 17 and a half months, so since the beginning of last season, he's played 2,070 minutes, and that equates to 23 full 90-minute games. In that time, United have played 92 games. So he's played 23 games worth of minutes across the 92 games. But on the flip side, he scored more goals for the club than Erik Cantona. So where does he stand?
Yeah, because he was here only 10 years.
Longevity. However,
we can't, just to let you know, we can never, ever, ever say the King's name alongside Martial.
No, they're two different. The King.
We cannot. No. We can't frame it in any other way.
But I was more putting it in perspective.
But, yeah.
He has had significant contribution to the club in
the
club's worst decade in the last 50 years.
And I do feel as well, in fairness to Martial, and this is looking at the entirety, because obviously the last 2 years has been a disaster for him, right, injury-wise. But in terms of him being the scapegoat a lot of times, or everything's wrong because of him, or he's lazy, or I do think he was misunderstood. I do think people took just how he is as a character and a personality. I think people took that personally. I think some people sort of labelled a lot at his doorstep when you look at Marcus Rashford and what his numbers are in a similar sort of time. It's about par. There's not much in it. Other players who have come through the club who have failed and not lived up to their expectations. It isn't just Anthony Martial. So I do feel like sometimes he was a bit unfairly treated at periods of his Man United career, but over the last 18 months to 2 years, it's the same. It's been the same old story.
You know what it is as well. And kind of touched on it with the injuries, right? And it comes back to people thinking that he's lazy or saying that he's not bothered. You can see it, bro. There are times where he wants to sprint for the ball, he wants to try and do something, but he is scared. Even Michael Owen said that when he done his hamstring the first time, after that he was not the same player, because mentally he weren't sprinting for that ball, he weren't leaping to get to this ball. You can see it in Martial, he's always scared because he always knows there is likely going to be an injury around the corner again, because that has been exactly what has happened for him time and time again at Man United.
Big up to United District, big up to Flex, big up to everyone involved yesterday. It was a good episode, strong episode. I really liked that show. Different kind of format for us here at United View, so be sure to check it out, What the Devil episode 2. It's available right now on the channel. You can find it. If you just go to the channel, click videos, it'll be right there, or click your subscription feeds. It'll be right there as well, so big up to everyone involved in that as well. And yeah, let me know your thoughts about Martial too. I mean, we spoke about him quite a lot recently, haven't we, in these morning shows. But I thought it was an interesting one. Thank God Flex jumped in when it came to the comparison to Erik Cantona. I was like, Dylan, don't you dare. don't you dare. Don't you dare even go there. But let's talk about no signings. Now, we spoke about this yesterday from the information that we had received, suggesting that essentially signings just not going to happen. Any form of incomings is nothing. Like the word we had was just nothing is happening at all on incomings, and that is due to there's no money to spend, basically, because of financial fair play and because of PSR. That's just not going to happen. Then it was later confirmed by The Athletic yesterday from Laurie Whitwell. They wrote the following, saying, Manchester United's January transfer plans will remain unchanged despite the aforementioned Anthony Martial undergoing groin surgery that is expected to keep him out for 10 weeks. The club are not projecting any major signings, and even a loan arrival has been ruled out at this stage, with United's spending severely restricted by profit and sustainability rules. That's the PSR stuff once again. Talks have taken place to assess the market for low-cost centre-forwards, and the arrival of Ineos has shaken up the environment, but United have paused on progressing anything. So all eyes are certainly turning towards the summer. Interestingly, though, when it comes to the summer, some names that have been linked to United, this is quite interesting. Laurie Whitwell said, in the summer, United will again look at centre-forward reinforcements using the savings from Martial's £240,000 a week salary. Ten Hag likes Brian Brobby, 21, after their time together at Ajax, while United are watching Ivan Toney's return to Premier League football. So, seeing that is first of all, I suppose, take it step by step, Owen. The first part, no January signings. Like I said, that's the information that we had yesterday, which is there is just nothing left. Ian Beale settings. I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left to give. United have no money in January. So even my prediction was wrong about, I think we'll get a loan signing. We ain't getting a loan signing. I think maybe there was hope initially, like December time and early January, that maybe with some of the loans going out, Donny, Sancho, a couple of the young players, Palestri, Hannibal, etc., that maybe just enough pennies would be put together, maybe, to sort of figure out, and maybe there might be like a Martial would exit or someone would go, and then maybe that would free up some space to get a loan in or possibly get someone in. That's not really played out that way. Obviously, people have left on loan, but it's not been enough for what United can do. And I think with Ineos now coming in, yes, they've been made assessments, but they've paused everything and they've just gone, let's just address it in the summer. Let's just get through. You know, the finances we're on shaky footing right now, so that's just not going to happen. Now, interestingly, when it does come to the summer, though, obviously, Brian Brobby linked to Manchester United once again. So it does appear that there is substance in those reports linking him with a move to Manchester United. You've got now several different outlets all saying the same thing, that Erik ten Hag really likes him. Erik ten Hag likes him from their time they've worked together at Ajax. He's having a fairly decent season in an underperforming Ajax side, even though they look to be a bit on the way back now. So that's one target. And the other is Ivan Toney, who obviously has just returned to Premier League action, Premier League competition, scored in their game, his return game the other day with a free kick that, when I watched that game, there's so many different points of that free kick that are just, it sums up the Premier League at the moment. First of all, when he scored that free kick, my initial reaction was, that is the worst wall and goalkeeping setup I've ever seen in my life. Like, it was just, he just side-footed it into the side of the net. I thought, that is weird. And then when you watch it back, Ivan Toney not only moves the ball, look, players move the ball all the time, but he moved it considerably to the right, got the magic spray stuff that's meant to have the ball in a certain position, put it on his hands, and then moved the ball, and then sort of moved the spray behind it as well, so it looked like it was in the right place. All of it was just horrific, wasn't it? Like, the free kick wasn't taken in the right place. He very clearly gained an advantage because he moved it to the other side of further than the wall was. And also, just the setup from Forest was a shambles as well, wasn't it? And from the goalkeeper and even the guy on the wall. Because if you watch it back, the guy on the wall said to the goalkeeper, am I in the right place? Am I in the right place? And Turner, the goalkeeper, goes, yeah, you're in the right place. And he's not. But then even the guy on the wall kind of jumps inwards out of the way of it. It was just shocking. Like, all of it was just absolutely shocking. I can't, all of it. Again, that sums up the Premier League. You know, should the goal stood? Probably not. Defensively, terrible. Goalkeeping, terrible. All of the above. It was terrible. And I think the reaction to it is quite interesting because the Ivan Toney situation is quite strange, isn't it? Because I do think there is an element of sympathy for him, and I don't think that part of that's justified, because he's admitted that he's got he's had a problem, an addiction, and that's no joke. I think it's ridiculous that that he's got this problem. And you look at Brentford's shirt sponsor, isn't it a gambling website? I think that's what it used to be. Well, that's what it is rather. And aren't they supposed to be getting away from that in the Premier League? I believe. I think they are. But on the flip side of things, there's been a lot of talk about how great the return is and the recovery is, and ultimately the reason he was the reason that he was suspended was because he broke the rules. So I think the coverage of it's been quite interesting too. Nevertheless, would he be right for Manchester United in the summer? I mean, he's 28, English striker. No one can doubt his quality. Nobody can. I would like to see something, maybe a bit younger, to be honest with you. And I don't mean like Rasmus Højlund younger. I think possibly sort of mid-20s, something like that. I think that again, I don't think you can worry about his quality and him scoring goals in the Premier League. I also just don't know if he'd want to come to us, to be honest with you. And again, that's not to necessarily say that he won't be sold on the project, but I mean, hasn't he publicly gone on record that he wants to go to Arsenal? He wants to go. Isn't he an Arsenal fan or he's a Liverpool fan? One of the two. And he will be expensive as well. I mean, some of the prices that were being quoted for him, I mean, this is probably part of the reason why he hasn't gone in January, is Brentford reportedly wanted something like, was it 100 million pounds, something like that? Possibly. So if that's the case, I mean, and that's why it's not happened in January, because as we just spoke about, we got no money. Well, just everyone's got no money. No one can spend 100 million pound in this January transfer window. Just not at all. So the summer, is Ivan Toney worth 100 million pound? Do you think? Do you think that's? Would you be comfortable spending that amount of money on Ivan Toney, or even 80 million pound on him? I'm not sure that I would. I want Man United to stay away from those kind of transfers, to be honest with you. What I hope under Ineos, my hope is that, and Berrada and these sporting directors and head of recruitments, is that if you were going to sign an Ivan Toney, you'd sign him for, I don't know, 60, 65 million, something like that, at a push. Getting 28, but English, proven Premier League goal scorer, something around that number. Not 100. Not 100. No chance. And I think United need to get, steer away from that kind of stuff. So, and I just don't see him going to United. I don't. I think he ends up going to Arsenal, or he goes to Liverpool or something. I think that's probably where he goes. Arsenal's going to be interesting because they need a striker, but they've also spent a lot of money recently too. They spent over 100 million on Declan Rice. Would they do it again in another summer after? It's going to be interesting. So we'll see. Some people are saying in the chat, Lil Yo-Yo says, we need a scumbag experienced forward to bring him in. Lil Yo is a big Tony fan, but then also says 60 million. Lucas Chan says, I'd rather get Ollie Watkins than Ivan Toney. Well, that's an interesting one too. I'm a big Ollie Watkins fan. I really, really like him. And this is even prior to him doing sort of well towards the end of last season and this season. I can't remember when I was having the conversation, but I was like, I'd bring in Ollie Watkins, because I think he's a very good system player. I really like his pressing from the front. I like his energy, and he has scored goals in the Premier League as well. But he's similar age to Ivan Toney as well. He's 28 too. So I agree when it comes to Højlund. Like, we need that more experienced player, that player that is played in the Premier League more, scores goals. I kind of just maybe want it to be sort of a mid-20s. Something like that, maybe, as opposed to sort of 28, 29. But you get someone in their prime. So we shall see. But I think striker's certainly going to be on the list for the summer. There's no doubt about that. What else are people saying here in the chat at the moment this morning? Chat Sport says Tammy Abraham all over them. Oof. Who else are people saying in the chat here at the moment? Kristen says wouldn't pay more than 30 million. What else are people saying? Wasabi says 65. Paul Lucas says nope. Compost Smurf says the striker market is pretty dead. Well, that is also true. Finding that sort of guaranteed goals is very, very challenging now, isn't it? That is tough. And you kind of always taken, it's a bad pun, you're always taking a bit of a gamble on all of these signings, aren't you? Victor Osimhen, he's also said that he's going to be he's like building it up like this is some big event, isn't he? He's going, I've made my decision. I know what I'm going to do in the summer. So it looks like Osimhen's going to be available for transfer, but we know his price. That's going to be very expensive too. But I do think he'll go somewhere in the summer. As to where he goes, I don't know. Napoli are really struggling in Serie A at the moment. Although I saw something quite interesting. And maybe this will change things. I don't know. But there was a rumour that, obviously because Napoli are really struggling and they got rid of the person that replaced Spalletti, and isn't Walter Mazzarri in there at the moment? Am I recalling that wrong? But he's on like a short-term deal. I saw a rumour that Jose Mourinho really wanted to stay in Italy and was essentially eyeing up the Napoli job. And I thought, well, if Jose went in there, maybe he would, try and convince Victor Osimhen to stick a while. I was sort of looking forward to it as well, talking about Jose going into Napoli. And do you know who they got in the Champions League? They've got Barcelona in the Champions League knockout stages. And I was looking at that thinking, that's that box office, isn't it? Jose, rubbish season with Roma, gets the sack, goes, I'm staying in Italy, goes to Napoli. Napoli was the champions last season, struggling, goes to play Barcelona in the Champions League, back at the new camp, doing Jose things. That would just be hilarious. So I don't know if that's a thing or not, but that's what I was reading the other day, if that's a possibility. And look, Barca aren't doing great, so you never know. Jose, knockout football, because he hasn't been in the Champions League for ages, has he? Since he was at Spurs, he hasn't been in the Champions League because he didn't do it with Roma. So I just think that'd be fascinating. As a neutral, watching that, I think it would be just incredible seeing him going up against Xavi in the Champions League. But yes, just to wrap up with this one, no January signings. That's not going to happen. And again, that was the information certainly we had yesterday. But eyes do turn towards the summer. And this is a link that's still really persisting, isn't it? And that's Joshua Zirkzee. Now, once again, this comes from Florian Plettenberg, who's spoken about this a couple of times, talking about Zirkzee. He said, quote, he's definitely on the list of the Red Devils. He's a potential summer transfer target. Manchester United were keen to sign him this winter, but Bologna made it clear that it was not for sale in January. But he can leave Bologna in the summer with a release clause of around 40 million euros. Now, the thing I'm a bit skeptical with this about is the part where he says United were keen to sign him this winter, but Bologna made it clear that he's not for sale in January. I go, I don't know about that. As we have just spoken about ad nauseum here this morning, we don't have any money. So why United would be in conversations with Bologna going, can we sign Zirkzee now on a permanent deal? I just go, I don't know if that's totally true. That sounds very agent-driven to me. That sounds very player representatives going, United were interested in him like now, and Bologna were like, no, come the summer. It sounds very much like we just want to make sure that everyone's aware that this guy's got a release clause of 40 million euros in the summer. He's a player that lots of people, he's a young player. At one point, he was like a prodigy. So let's remind everyone, 40 million in the summer, he's available. Let's make sure that we can get him a summer move. That's what it kind of feels like to me, a kind of advertising situation. So I don't know how much stock there is in him, United going that we wanted him in January or anything like that. Come the summer, could it be a possibility that we're interested in Zirkzee? I mean, absolutely. And I think 40 million euros, it's not that much money. It's a release clause, so we can pay it. And maybe that's something we'll go for. But again, I mean, how old Zirkzee? Isn't he like 20? Let's have a look. Make sure I do my research. He's 22. He's 22. Goal scoring record, done okay. This season at Bologna, played 16 games, got 8 goals. Last season, played 22, scored 2. His best season goal-scoring-wise was when he was on loan at Anderlecht. Played 47 times, scored 18 goals. When he was at Bayern, didn't play a ton of games. Played 12 games in the 2019-2020 season. 12 games, 4 goals. 2021, only played 5 games. Went on loan to Parma. Didn't play that many games as well. So, I mean, look, he's still young, but hasn't scored a ton of goals, 22, kind of needs that sort of stable, big move. But I don't know. It's low price, so I suppose it's one of those situations where you go, well, there's low risk involved in it, but it kind of feels very sort of Højlund-ish, doesn't it? Where you're going, well, we hope he's going to turn into this big goal scorer. But how many goals did he get last season? About 9. About 9 goals. So should we be surprised when he comes in and maybe sort of goes through periods of time where he's not scoring goals? Probably not. As Pyramid says, Zirkzee at one point had 5-star potential in Football Manager. That's my point of reference for him, really. I remember in the Football Manager games of was it like 5 years ago, something like that? You used to always see his name as like big 5-star potential star. Maybe he can become that in the future. Look, Martin Odegaard, he went to Real Madrid when he was 16. Then for a while, it looked like, oh, maybe he's not going to live up to the potential. Now he's the Arsenal captain. So things can turn around. Things can click. 40 million euros, not too much money. But if we went into next season and our sort of 2 strikers that we had were Zirkzee and Højlund, would that fill you with confidence? Like, okay, cool, we've got really good viable options. Or would you still be looking for that bit more of experience? And I suppose this when it comes back to the discussion of like an Ivan Toney or someone like that, where do you find that balance between, okay, we just need that established person that's got experience, not super old, they're not like over 30 or anything like that, but they're established. We can, they're in their prime now and they score goals in the Premier League. Or do you have sort of younger players that you hope can develop into something? Does that depend on the coach? We're as fans asking for that all the time, aren't we? Going, Man United need to find those sort of up-and-coming players that they can develop into players. Is Zirkzee one of those players? I don't know. That's going to be really interesting to see, no doubt about it. Lil Yo-Yo is still really firm on his opinion. Tony is needed, in his opinion. That's it. Very strong. Very, very strong. Adrian says FM is normally correct on their gems, to be honest. They've got a good track record. Not always right, though. I mean, I can't think of players off the top of my head. But there are some players, you get used to get the Wonder Kid shortlist, and some players, and then 5-star you never hear from again. Ever. But then some players, you're right. Some players, it is one of those sort of strange situations, isn't it? When you're playing Football Manager and you sign this like Wonder Kid, and then 3 or 4 years later, you're watching Sky Sports or you're going through social media and you see that person's name linked with a move and you go, oh my God, I know them. Yeah. Christian says Freddie Adu. I remember that one. Yeah. Who else was like a FM loan kid or an FM like Wonder Kid that we never heard from ever again? There must have been a few. I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head. Who did I used to? I haven't played FM in such a long time. I used to be really, honestly, and I'd be one of those people that modded it out as well. I get all of the skins, all of the face packs, all of the stadium packs as well, because you got to. You can't do it without all of the modifications. It's got to look good. It's got to look real. It's still real to me, damn it. Yeah, I used to do that all the time. This is an interesting one. One that, was a Wonder Kid on FM. Didn't really work out. Pav says Messi. Never heard of him again, which was interesting. That's, never heard of that one. Ganzo. Used to hear about Ganzo a lot. Yes. That's sort of 2012 times, maybe? 2011, 2012 times? Ganzo. Every game. Football Manager used to love Ganzo. All the time. Yes, I remember that one. That was a constant. Absolutely. Anyway, I'm veering off into a different direction. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. What's on tap for the remainder of the day? Well, as I mentioned, there's going to be a press conference at about 1:30, 1:45-ish. So I'll be live at 2 p.m. to be live and go through those questions, those responses. Of course, it's the FA Cup this weekend. We've got an away trip to Newport County of League Two. So it's going to be interesting to see what Erik ten Hag has to say. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks, hasn't it? So it'll be interesting to get his responses on Omar Berrada, team news, injuries, transfers, things of that nature. So join me at 2 o'clock for that. And then 6 p.m. we'll have a preview for the FA Cup game. We'll be Flex and myself chatting about the game at the weekend. So be sure to join us for that as well. Anyway, guys, have a good morning. Have a good Friday. And I'll speak to you again very soon. I'm out of here. Peace.